As you grow your practice, one of the things that you'll need are some good systems in place that will help you in automating your practice and making sure everything runs smoothly. TherapyNotes is the #1 provider of electronic health record systems for mental health providers. TherapyNotes has everything you need to manage patient records, schedule appointments, create rich documentation, and bill insurance right at your fingertips. Their streamlined software is accessible wherever and whenever you need it. So go check them out today, therapynotes.com. And if you use the coupon code Gordon, just GORDON, you can get your first 2 months free. So check them out today, therapynotes.com. This is the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer, helping you to navigate your private practice journey. This is session number 120 of the Practice of Therapy podcast. Hello, folks. I'm Gordon Brewer. So glad you've joined me for this episode. Glad you're here. Glad you found us. Hope you'll come back for more and take time to subscribe to the podcast. If you've already subscribed, so glad you have. Glad you're back. Glad you're listening in. And hope that this information in the podcast and all that I'm doing here is helpful to you. That's the reason I do it, is helping you get the resources and things you need to have a successful private practice. So I'm so glad for this episode. So happy about it, excited, whatever adjectives I can think of, to have LaTonya Shelton with me. LaTonya is one of those people that I think is going to be a rising star in private practice. I met LaTonya as part of one of my focus groups or mastermind groups. And you've heard me talk a little bit about those, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that here in just a second. But LaTonya was one of those people that joined one of my focus groups, and she really has just excelled over the last year. And so we're going to be talking about what things that she's learned this first year of private practice. And I think you're going to enjoy hearing from LaTonya and just hearing about the great things that she's been able to do in her practice. As I mentioned, one of the things we've got coming up, and as this episode is coming out, there's still just a little bit of time left to register or apply for one of the focus groups that I've got. We're getting started here on March the 26th is when they'll begin. But a focus group or a mastermind group, whatever you prefer to call it, is a way to get together with other people that are at similar places in their private practices. And it's a way for you to get the support you need and get coaching and mentoring, not only from me, but also the other people in the group. And I know that every single time that I have been part of a focus group, it has just helped me tremendously in my practice. It's just the things that I learned and the ideas that I got and just the support that I got enabled me to take my practice to a next level every single time. I can remember back, and those of you that have listened to the podcast for a while know about Whitney Owens, who has another podcast, the Faith and Practice podcast. So little shout out to Whitney there. Whitney and I met through a focus group, through a mastermind group, and got to get to know her, and she has been just a great friend and mentor to me, and all of that. And just really, I've learned from her, and hopefully she's learned from me just about growing our practices. And so, anyway, focus groups are starting. You can apply by going over to practiceoftherapy.com/focus group. And the plan is the format is that we will meet twice a month via Zoom, and we'll divide the groups up into different different levels in terms of where you are in your practice, whether you're just getting started or whether you've been in practice a while. And then we'll spend time each time we meet talking about the things that you're working on, the questions you have, the guidance you're looking for, of things you're trying to figure out. And then we also have a private Facebook group in conjunction with that, where people can ask questions and interact in between our meetings. So, anyway, I would love to invite you to that. Just a few more slots left. We're getting pretty full here. So be sure to go over and apply to that. And, again, it's a 4-month commitment, twice a month for 4 months. We meet at regular times, and the cost is just $89 a month, for those 4 months. And it's, I think it's just, I think you'll find that you will absolutely get the return on your investment in that. If you were to think about it and you were to get at least one new client from what you learned there, or be able to add one new person to your practice, or be able to up your fees, or whatever way you look at it, it would pay for itself. And that's the reason I priced it at that particular level, because I think you will quickly get your return on your investment. So it's kind of a no-brainer in that way. So anyway, if you'll go over to practiceoftherapy.com/focus group, you can sign up and apply. So that's all I'm going to say about that for now. So, looking forward to you getting to know LaTonya and just the wonderful things she's done over this last year in growing her practice. And I think what you'll find in hearing LaTonya is just how inspirational she is. She is just a delight to get to know. And I'm really so thankful and so grateful to her for what she contributed to the group, and also what I learned from her along the way. And she's just an inspiration for me. And I love having people like this on the podcast. So without further ado, here's my friend, LaTonya Shelton. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome again to the Practice of Therapy podcast. And you just don't know how thrilled I am to have this person with me today, LaTonya Shelton. LaTonya was in one of my focus groups, mastermind groups, and she's just one person that's near and dear to my heart. Welcome, LaTonya.
Thank you, Gordon.
Yes, I'm so happy to have this conversation and for you all to kind of get to know LaTonya a little bit as I have, and just sharing her practice journey. So LaTonya, as I start with everyone, tell folks a little bit about your private practice journey and how you've landed where you've landed, and some more about you.
Sure. Oh, goodness. Well, to start, I am owner of Red Jasper Counseling, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker, as well as a registered yoga teacher and meditation instructor. And so my focus is to blend that into private practice. And boy, that's a big topic, how my journey began. I guess the short and quick of it is, after being in the field and working in group private practice and community mental health, addiction centers, I just knew that it was time for me to really take control of my level of experience and the creativity that I wanted to use with the clinical work that I do. And I knew that it was time. This was a natural progression for me to go into private practice. And so it's been a little over a year, and I am excited about that.
Yes, yes. And as I mentioned, I'm a little bit at an advance. Well, I would say I've got a little bit of a leg up on this because I know LaTonya, I know her story because she worked with me in one of our focus groups, our mastermind groups. And so I know a little bit of her story. But LaTonya, tell folks, just maybe, I guess maybe a good question is, what has surprised you most about your first year in private practice?
Oh, that's a great question. What has surprised me most is that I learned that I really can do more than I originally thought that I could. I am a dreamer, but I'm equal part dreamer and hard worker. I'm a very boots on the ground. You use that term a lot, Gordon. So it has surprised me that I've made it further than I thought that I could when I first started this journey, maybe in my head, about 5 years ago. In my head, I started this journey. And to actually be here now, making my own money and doing the hard work that it takes along with that is very rewarding.
Yeah, yeah. And I know one of the things that we talked about before we started recording was just the fact that one of the things that you've kind of figured out along the way is doing it kind of your own way.
Yes.
And just and the importance of self-care. So you want to say some more about that?
Sure. Doing things your own way. I'll start there and kind of weave into the self-care. It is so easy. I call myself a self-starter. It is so easy to get overwhelmed and inundated with all of the information that's out there. There's a lot of opportunity for mastermind groups such as your own and other business coaching information out there. And it's so easy to get overwhelmed. And so to just take the pieces that you need and to simply start, just start somewhere. You're not going to get it right and perfect in the beginning, but that's the beauty of starting and moving forward on a journey. And you asked me about self-care. Boy, that is such a buzzword these days. Some of the self-care that I engage in with, it's very simple. It is enjoying a cup of coffee most mornings with my dog, walking in the park. And that probably sounds so cliche, but it really does work for me. Talking to supportive people. I call myself very internally resourced, meaning that I don't have a lot of external resources by way of people and just groups that I am actively a part of. But the resources that I do have that are around me, my mom, I have to say that. So talk with her a lot when she notices that, hey, you sound a little this way this evening. Is everything okay? And if there's something that I need to just kind of share with her, and that, I just need encouragement, and she's there to give me that. So doing the things that really get you out in nature is helpful. Breathing and talking to and being around people that really support you. That has been the crux of my self-care, in addition to all the beautifying things that we like to do.
Right. Well, I think you really strike a chord there with, you're absolutely correct. There is so much information out there now just around being able to start a private practice, how to go about it. And everybody has their own spin to it. But I think you find, like you said, and the one thing I love that you said there was you just start somewhere. And it doesn't really matter where you start. You just start somewhere, because I guess that's why I have such an affinity for LaTonya, is that we're both dreamers, and we get. And I'm always been accused of getting my head lost in the clouds. I was that kid. I was that kid in school that got called out for daydreaming too much. And so, but yeah, I think it's just finding something and just starting there. And you're exactly right, LaTonya. We'll never get it exactly right the first time, but you got to take that leap, and you got to make that jump. Yeah.
You do. And I have to, for those of you who may be listening and thinking, boy, will I ever be able to do it? And all of those kind of thoughts you may have in your mind around, I'm too old, or I don't know enough, or I know too much, or, there's, the kind of like limited thinking. I want to encourage you to really throw that out the window. First, say thank you, because it's just trying to protect you. All right. And then you want to be able to ask it to exit left so that you can show up and do the work that you really want to do. And so I'm speaking from, that's what I had to do. So I'm equal dreamer, but I'm also a planner, love to be organized, and learning to balance that as well as be flexible has been helpful as well. So I would say, if you're listening to this podcast and you're wondering, should I go into private practice? Can I do it? Is it realistic? Can I get panel can I panel myself through insurance companies? You can do any and all of that. And it's going to be scary and there's going to be peaks and valleys, but just start and you'll find your way. You'll meet great people like Gordon and some of the other folks that I met in the focus group, his mastermind group, that will be able to encourage you along the way.
Right, right. Yeah. And so, and I'm just curious, over this past year, as you have just kind of taken off and started running with the ball, so to speak.
Yeah.
What have been the pain points for you along the way, would you say?
Yeah. So some pain points for me have been the not knowing. There's going to be a lot of not knowing, and that can be off-putting at times because you really want this thing to work. You may have some things riding on it, like finances, and maybe people depending on you. So the journey not being predictable. I could speak on that being a pain point. So I really had to work with myself there to say, and this is a mantra that I made up, an affirmation that I chose this and I'm willing to do what's necessary. And so when things get really hard, when things get really tough, or I'm tired or a little bit discouraged, I say that. Another pain point has been the concerns and worry about, will I have enough clients? That first startup phase, you get your first client or your first 5 clients and you wonder, okay, is this really sustainable? Learning how to market, like all of the things that are very new to what would cause your business to be sustainable. And that's what we really want. We want to scale and grow. So that's been a pain point, kind of not knowing and then deciding what marketing avenues, worrying about, okay, are clients really going to show up? Do I really know what I'm talking about? Am I a great therapist? So you really, at some point, sometimes I will say maybe not for all, start to maybe even question, your skill level. I think in the field, it's the imposter syndrome is what they call it. So these are just natural progressions that come up. So those were some of the pain points for me. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it did. And I think, I think the thing that, again, that resonates with me is just the fact that you've been just so persistent with everything.
Yes.
In other words, you've kind of gone into it with a mindset of, okay, I know I'm going to hit some rocky patches here, but I can handle that. And not just letting that shut you down kind of thing.
Yes. That's been really important to really keep in mind because, you may find yourself at any point when you're on this learning journey, comparing yourself to, I should be further along, or I'm not doing enough, or I'm doing too much, or I'm not doing the right things in the right way. So being able to just stop. And this is where the kind of the yoga training comes in, to step back, to take a breath, and maybe even to take a second breath, and to really think about, the why is what they say. I hear you say that, Gordon, a lot. Why is this important? And you can also I ask myself, why now? And that helps me to be able to decipher between something that emotionally I'm just I'm tied to getting done, as opposed to something that needs to be done in order to keep the business afloat.
Right.
So the why is important, but why now? Because there could be a deviation from that. So I use this. I'm just not, kind of making this up and sounding, woo-woo. I really say this to myself.
Right. I love that. Yeah, I love that. I love that question. Why now? Because
why now?
I think it's real important to recognize, as we grow our practices, as we, keep doing what we're doing and all that sort of thing, is to recognize the fact that there are seasons to it. And to be able to recognize what season you're in. Is now the right time for this, or should I wait, or should I just put it way on the back burner? Or I think those are brilliant questions to be asking as you go through this. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I wanted to
So,
say one other thing,
yeah, go
if I
ahead.
could. I
Yeah.
will share that amongst gathering the information just along this journey, there's some wonderful podcasts out there. Gordon's Practice of the Therapy podcast, amongst others, are out there. And you don't know this, Gordon, but I want to share something. You inspired me.
Oh.
Yeah, you don't know this, so I'm going to share it with you now. It's okay,
Uh,
really quick. And so I don't remember what podcast it was. I think it was one of the earlier podcasts you had done. And I just remember hearing the excitement in your voice when you said, "Hey, this is our first podcast." So
mhm.
hearing other people be excited helps me be excited as well. But you gave some very helpful advice around when is it time to kind of jump from, if you're working and you're migrating your way into private practice. You had given a suggestion, and I hope I get this right, that maybe saving 3 months of income
Mhm.
before you jump into private practice, and it could be even the part-time, just to have a little cushion,
Mhm.
um, that can be helpful. And if you don't have 3 months, save 2 months. So I remember
Mhm.
your kind of language. I don't know if you recall this episode
Right.
is one of your earlier ones, but I
Yeah.
held on to that because I
Mhm.
had a huge fear around, what if I don't make enough to be able to pay my bills, and all
Right.
the things that anxiety, kind of brings about. But
Right.
yes, Gordon. So it was what you said helped to kind of really stick in my mind to say, you know what? I still have my full-time job, and this was months before. And
Mhm.
let me be able to kind of save as much as I can and slowly shift and migrate into private practice. And I did that, and it worked. And I just
Great.
kept going. So
Yeah,
thank you,
that's
Gordon.
great.
You don't know that, but
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah, great, great. Yeah, I think what you're talking about is just the importance of, I think as people move into private practice, that it's a scary step. I mean,
Very,
that's just kind of goes without saying. But I
very.
think you can kind of ease some of the anxiety by knowing that you've got kind of your financial house in order and you've got that buffer. I like to call it that financial buffer
Mhm.
and you're exactly right. I say at the very least save up 2 months of income and expenses. So if you did nothing, I mean, if you just went and sat on the beach for 2 months and did nothing, you would have everything covered. But obviously, you don't want to sit on the beach. Well, yeah, if you want to, you can sit on the beach for 2 months. But
Yeah, that'd be nice.
but having that buffer there just takes away a lot of the anxiety around all of that.
Yes,
So yeah,
it does.
yeah.
It does.
So well, the other thing that is really intriguing to me, LaTonya, as you said before we started recording, you're full. I mean, in
Oh
terms of
yeah.
your practice being full. So, big question: how'd you do it?
Yeah. Oh, let me say I've been full. I've been turning folks away since October. So that was,
Wow.
at the yeah, so that wasn't even at my year. That was like 7, 8 months in. And so one, it's a wonderful, new, ooey gooey goal to have gotten to, but it's stressful as well because then you think, well, I'm turning people away. Now what? What does this mean?
Uh huh.
But how did I get there? I think was your question. Several avenues. So I signed up for directories that I knew would be helpful to me in order for clients to gain that visibility. I'm also paneled with 4 insurance companies, and so
Mm-hmm.
if they, part of the process is they encourage you to get on their websites and just kind of have your listing current and active, and so
Mm-hmm.
clients can find you. There's also being an African American female therapist is really important, a really important vantage, I would say, for
Okay. Yeah.
people of color and other minorities who are looking for diverse clinicians, or specifically clinicians of color. And so
Mm-hmm.
I actually joined a directory, Therapy for Black Girls, and joined that directory and have gotten a lot of responses for
Yeah.
folks who are looking for clinicians of color. And so there's, again, the Psychology Today. So the basic marketing directories for clinicians, but also looking at other directories, for example, Therapy Den, other directories where folks who are looking for diverse clinicians can be seen. So those were the ways that I did it. And I also have a website,
Yes, yes.
so that's, part of the kind of the foundation of how,
right.
how I was able to do it. Everyone doesn't have a website. If you don't have one, you probably need one. There's some good recommendations out there. So all of that has just really amassed, a good buzz, and also folks that have been waiting for me to go into private practice. They're like, I'll wait for you. So it's been good. It's been scary. It's been very scary at times, but I just kept going.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too that's probably helped you with that, and you kind of alluded to this, and just knowing LaTonya and kind of knowing some of her story, she's very well connected with her community. Just in several areas, you've just kind of been established where you are, and so like you said, people are, when they found out you were in private practice, they were flocking to you, and then they're probably referring friends to you, and and all of that sort of thing. And so it's really,
that happens.
That's really kind of the key. It's just it's relationship building. That's all it is. And just whether it's online or in person and that sort of thing. And so that's great. Yeah.
And I tend to be that type of person. There are parts of me that tends to be an introvert. People don't believe it because I'm very excitable and happy and joyous. But talking to people, of course, I'm a clinician, is a strength. So being able to really, help people understand the importance of therapy, especially in communities of color. It's looked upon sometimes as not such a wonderful thing, to come to therapy. So to really be able to, be an example of fighting against that stigma is a wonderful thing.
Yeah. And I think that's in many ways that's universal, I think, as well. And I think one of the things I have to remind myself is because we work in it, we don't necessarily see the stigma. We don't think of it in that way, but I think a big majority of people saying, well, they're going to see the shrink,
and all the jokes, all the jokes around there.
Right. So, well, LaTonya, what else would you say would be important for people to know in their early starting times, into private practice?
Yeah. So early on, you've probably thought about this for a while. So you probably have some things and ideas written down. I say really go back and reflect on those quite often. Some things that are important to know is how you want to be able to establish your business, what type of designation you want to give it. I'm a PLLC. Also being able to kind of join others who are in the field and who are specifically opening up their private practice. If there are some types of groups to join or just colleagues that that have done it, hold them close, ask them questions. You also want to do the basics with getting your, business banking affairs in order because you want to remain sustainable. You also want to think about that how you start is maybe not how you will. There are detours that you will come up against. One of the detours that I'm coming up against is that I'm looking for more ways to add passive income into my practice and not so much stay with just the direct practice so much. I thought at one point that I wanted to have a group practice, and now that's changed. So I'd say if you're starting off, leave room for flexibility. So you're growing, but you don't want to be so fixed-minded where you kind of shut yourself out of other opportunities that can come along the way. Other things that you want to be prepared for as much as you can is, really be prepared to get out of your comfort zone. I think that's the most honest, truthful statement.
All right.
Be prepared to be uncomfortable at times. Yeah. I want to make sure I haven't gotten off track.
No. That's perfect. I think those are, Yeah, you're right on the mark with all of that. Yeah. Yeah, and just that thinking about those first steps and just getting started in private practice and that sort of thing. Yeah, what I'm just curious, and I don't think I've really been able to ask you this directly, but
Yeah.
what would you say with the mastermind group? What was helpful for you with that process?
Yes, yes. So that's a great question. One, I want to say that you are so open and giving, Gordon, with your information. You want to always check to make sure that folks are getting what they need. So that was helpful for me. But what was most helpful is the camaraderie that was gained as a result of being a part of the group. So there
Mm-hmm.
were times in between, being a part of the group, that there was an accountability partner that I had.
Mm-hmm.
And she and we would talk, in between sessions, in between meeting times rather. And we were encouragement for one another. What also was helpful is that to see, I refer to myself in the group as the baby, the little man, because everyone else seemed to be, so much more well established. And so it was wonderful being able to see how well others have done and have gone, and yet they still had questions. They still had room to grow. So seeing them much further ahead than I was really gave me some inspiration. Like, oh, so it's not that you reach this peak and then you know it all. You just hit another peak,
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
so it was wonderful being able to really see some of the areas in which they ask for help and ask for feedback. And even I was able to give, some feedback to those who were much more well established than I was. And so the openness and the willingness to kind of listen and be there, and to ask, well, how did that go? LaTonya, you said you wanted to do this. How did it go? So having that feeling around being supported and thought about and then followed up on was really helpful and heartwarming.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that, because that's really, really my hope for the focus groups, the mastermind groups is for it to be supportive. I mean, that's the whole purpose in doing it. And so, yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, LaTonya, I want to be respectful of your time, and, we could probably spend all day just chatting about stuff and just connecting. And I'm so glad LaTonya's in the Nashville area, and fortunately she was not affected by the storms there, but knows people that were, and neighbors and that sort of thing. And so, thoughts and prayers for you guys as you recover all of that in your
thank you so much for
community.
that.
Yeah. So, well, tell folks how they can get in touch with you and that sort of thing in your website. And
Sure. So LaTonya Shelton, LCSWRYT. I am Googleable. That's a term that I kind of made up, I think.
Yeah, I like that word.
Googleable, yeah. And so you can find out more about me or Red Jasper at www.redjaspercounseling.com. And I'm available on some of the most more common directories for therapists. And I really appreciate this opportunity to be able to share that.
Well, I'm pretty sure we'll be hearing more from LaTonya, because in my mind, she's a bright star, number one, but she's also a rising star. So,
oh wow, thank you. That means a lot.
So, well, LaTonya, thanks again for being on the podcast, and we'll hear from you again, I'm sure.
Thanks, Gordon. I appreciate you.
Well, I hope you've enjoyed hearing from LaTonya and getting to hear her story and just some of the things that she's been working on. And man, what an inspiration. I'm just so grateful to her and the work that she's doing, and the fact that she's just willing to share in such a kind and genuine way. And she's one of my favorite people And so I'm glad she joined me for the podcast. And so keep your ear to the ground, so to speak, because you'll probably be hearing some more from LaTonya here in the future. She's, I think, going to be a leader in our field, and she's really got a lot to offer. So keep an eye and ear out for her. And also just go over and be sure to check her out at Red Jasper Counseling. And again, the links to her website and to her information will be here in the show summary and the show notes. Also, love for you to join me for a focus group. I think it would boost your practice. I think, as I said earlier, it's absolutely worth the return on your investment of both your time and your money. And so love for you to join me for that. And again, you can get to that by going to practiceoftherapy.com/focus group. And also be sure and check out our sponsor for today's podcast, TherapyNotes, therapynotes.com. They're who I use in my practice, and they are absolutely one of the leaders in electronic health records for mental health providers. They'll not only give you a great platform to be able to keep medical records, but also our patient records securely and HIPAA compliant, but also their platform and their client portal is one of the best. And as far as giving people access to your practice and sending out appointment reminders, filing insurance claims, all of those things that we need in our practices. So check them out today, therapynotes.com. And if you'll use the coupon code Gordon, just GORDON, you can get 2 months of their services for free. So be sure and check them out. And always, I invite you to go to the website, practiceoftherapy.com. We're always adding new stuff to the website and new resources and things that come up. And you can just go, if you go to practiceoftherapy.com and click on the cool resources button that is there at the top, you can see some of the resources that I recommend. Also, be sure and go in and check out some of the older episodes of the podcast. There's lots of great information there. And I've got lots of great content coming in terms of people that are going to be joining me for the podcast and all those wonderful things. So be sure and check it out at practiceoftherapy.com. Sorry for my phone ringing there, but I'm just going to leave that in. Just leave that in anyway. So take care, folks. I hope you have a great rest of your week or weekend whenever you might be listening to this. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you might be listening to it. And if you ever have questions for me, feel free to reach out to me at Gordon@practiceoftherapy.com. I love hearing from folks and love getting your feedback. So take care, folks. Hope you have a great rest of your week or weekend, and join us again for the Practice of Therapy podcast. Been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer. Please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com for more information, resources, and tools to help you in starting, building, and growing your private practice. And if you haven't done so already, please sign up to receive the free private practice startup guide at practiceoftherapy.com. The information in this podcast is intended to be accurate and authoritative concerning the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, or producers are rendering legal, accounting, or clinical advice. If you need a professional, you should find the right person for that.